Hey plant people, welcome, hello, thank you for stopping by to check out my favorite plants for the month of October. This month has been a little bit different for me just because I feel like I wouldn't necessarily call it plant burnout, but I have just been less interested or less focused on my plants than I normally am. Like, I feel like my brain is mostly full of plant things most of the time, but this month I've been having to kind of get myself together and ready to start working at the end of the month. So I've just had a lot of other stuff going on in my brain. So the plants have definitely not been at the forefront of my noggin for this last month. The ones that I've chosen are some of the ones that have kind of like held my interest through this past period when I've just been really focused on other things. I definitely kind of shift to just keeping my plants alive and making sure that they're surviving rather than like really, it's just like I haven't been like appreciating them as much as I normally do. And again, I don't feel like it's total burnout because I still love them, you know, like I'm still thinking about them. They still bring me joy. They're just not the most important thing that's happening in my life right now. I do feel like I've been doing a pretty good job in that I've really cleared out a bunch of plants that I've talked about this before, but I've just been like, you know, caring for, but they haven't like brought me joy, or I haven't enjoyed having them around. I've just been like trying to help them survive. And I feel like that's not like, is that really what you want to invest your energy in? This is what I've been telling myself. Is that really what you've been wanting to invest your energy in, is taking care of things that you don't even like really care about that much? So yeah, we've just done some restructuring, and that brings us to the plants that I have actually still been really loving this past month. Okay, number one is a Scindapsus. And no, before you jump to conclusions, it is not my Scindapsus Jade Satin Aurea that I talk about in every single video, although that is still probably my favorite plant. And I'm just not gonna talk about it in this video because I've literally talked about it in like all of my previous like 6 videos or something, because it's just always like, I always love that plant. It's always got my attention and my appreciation, and it's always making me happy. But we're gonna skip it for this month for the sake of paying attention to some of my other plants that I love, because y'all know about that plant already. So this is a Scindapsus Dark Splash, and this is still like a rather juvenile plant. Like I bought this as a cutting, and it's just been kind of like hanging out, not doing a whole lot of nothing for a little while since I repotted it, but that's like to be expected. You know, he's just getting adjusted and getting acclimated to his new setup. And his new leaves, like these new leaves are not quite as dark. The variegation is still really beautiful. Like, it's still a really beautiful plant, but I really love this lower eldest leaf here. You can see how dark that leaf is, and it has kind of like a little bit of a silvery splash, and then also that kind of like creamy variegation. That is just so pretty for me. I like when the leaves are really, really dark in contrast to the variegation, it makes it stand out, I feel like, just a little bit more. And it is growing finally. So it had these leaves for a little while, and then it put out this leaf up here. And you can see how this leaf is like darkening off. So I'm assuming, because that's what my Jade Satin Aurea does too, is it's like the newest leaves are kind of like a lighter green, and over time they fade off to more of like a dark color. So I am looking forward to the leaves kind of darkening off like this lower one, just because I think that is so pretty. And it is growing. It has this little nub of a leaf on that vine that is coming off. And when I got this, I repotted it into just like a chunky soil mix, but I didn't put it on a moss pole yet because I don't know, I already have like 5 Scindapsus on moss poles. So I was like thinking about logistically where I'm going to put this if I have it on a moss pole. And I don't have an answer to that question yet, which is why it's not currently on a moss pole, but it is doing just fine on this little like stake, honestly. Like, its leaves still look pretty good. And if they start getting super duper small, like, I'll just figure it out. I'll figure out where where to stick it, and I'll get it on a moss pole, and I'll probably do that eventually anyways. But for now, I'm just enjoying it in this little cup with a little stake in this like small, because it's easier to fit over there with my other Scindapsus when it's like in this smaller pot setup with no pole. So yeah, that is number one that we have today. Cutie pie. Next, we're going to move on to a Hoya. I like to include at least one Hoya in my favorites every month because I feel like that's reasonable considering how many Hoya that I have in my little like Hoya cabinet setup that I have over here. I will say I've been a little unhinged recently. I told you, you know, we've been doing some restructuring, and my Hoya were just, I don't know. I just felt like doing something a little crazy. So I chopped all of my Hoya, chopped every single one of them down to like 2-leaf cuttings just because the growth was not, they were just irritating me, you know, like their growth was not doing what I wanted it to do. And I feel like the majority of that is my fault because I was not giving them enough light or water for a little while. I've implemented a solution for that. So they started doing better, but they had this like kind of, you could tell in the growth, like the period of neglect in the plants. So I was like, you know what, we're just going to give them kind of like a fresh start. And so I chopped them all the way down, all the way back to like 1 or 2 leaves on every single one of my plants. And then I was like, well, you know, I want to propagate all of these because I'm not just going to like get rid of all these propagations that I could have. Did I want to stick all of these like cut up leaf cuttings in propagation vessels all over? Do you know how much space that would take up? Way too much space. So I just stuck them back in the dirt, and I was very sure that that was not going to turn out well for everybody, but I was like, you know what, if a few of them take, I will call that a win because it's something and I don't have to deal with propagations all over my house. I know, look, this is just, we're all a little crazy sometimes, okay? And this was my thought process at this point in time. And you know what? They are, almost all of them are doing really well and growing. And I am so surprised. The only one that like immediately rotted was my Multiflora Wonderful. And I'm realizing that the Multiflora is just like kind of like a finicky Hoya. Like I've had issues with that one, and I have a variegated Multiflora that is not doing well whatsoever. We'll see what happens to that. It looks absolutely terrible, but it just put out 2 new leaves. So it's like, I have no idea. But anyways, I'm rambling. The point is, I have been cutting everything back. I was expecting to maybe like lose some Hoyas, which I did. I recently lost my Kaimuki and my Undulata. I have like 2 little like very small node cuttings of that one that I don't know what's going to happen with. But that actually happened because I repot them recently and they just were not happy with that for some reason, but here we are. So I had some Hoya cuttings that I had purchased like a really long time ago, and I just never potted up. I just kept like refilling the water in their little like propagation vessels. And I decided to go ahead and pot all of those up, and they are also surprisingly doing really well. So I'm feeling really good about myself. Like I'm feeling pretty confident that my Hoya game has like really improved over these past like 6 months. But the one that we're going to be talking about for today's video is the Hoya Germany. And this is one of the cuttings that I purchased. And this is very much like 100% on brand me type of Hoya. We've got kind of like these crusty looking, veiny, funky, lumpy leaves. And that is what I'm really into. I'm definitely like a crusty, weird Hoya person, which really like is not surprising whatsoever if you know me. It is so beautiful. It's very like the veination, beautiful. It's got a little bit of a splash, not like too much of a splash where it's distracting you from those really beautiful veins, but also like the size of this. This is gorgeous. Look at how big that leaf is. I love big leaves too. Yeah, so this, and it's very like rigid and firm. Absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And I was like kind of leery about how it was doing because it was like the coloration was changing a little bit, but I think that's just because I moved it and it was getting more light. The sun's stressing a little bit. But I looked at the bottom and look at that little cutie root. That was such a good sign for me. Like, I was so happy to see that. And I think we've got like one more root right here, like going right there. That looks like a root to me. So that is really good news that it is putting out some roots. It has not like started a growth point anywhere. So that is yet to be seen what's going to happen with that. But the roots are happening in there. So Hoya Germany, beautiful, veiny, weird, big, lumpy Hoya, if you're into that, and I am. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is a really big one, and this is going to be kind of like an update also for my Anthurium water dragon, which I unboxed and repotted in a video not too long ago. I will link that in the description if you're interested in seeing that plant get unboxed. It had the worst case of root rot that I have ever seen. My skin still crawls when I think about the root rot that was on that plant. So it was a lot of work, but I've got her repotted, got her roots all fixed up, and she is sticking out roots everywhere now. So she is doing so well. We still do not have a new leaf yet, but I'm not worried about it because you can see, look at all these roots that she is sticking out. Like, these are coming from the top, like the top of the chonk here. And like, these are all the way around the plant. You can kind of see they're just, oops, sorry, these leaves are everywhere. You're going to hear some bonks on the mic. But you can see here too, the roots that are coming out. Like, it is just exploding from everywhere on this plant. And let me lift her out of here. Like, we can see she's got all these roots that are crawling through here. And she's got roots down here. And that's kind of like all the way around the pot. So her roots are doing great. I really truly just think that she's regrowing like a lot of the roots that she lost, which is why she's not focused on putting out new leaves right now. But we do still have all of the leaves that she came with. Like, you can see her stature, like her wingspan, just kind of like the way that she sits, absolutely gorgeous. Like, I cannot explain how happy this plant makes me every single day. I have it sitting on my dining table, so it's like one of the, when I walk out in the mornings, like it's like just like right there in your face. It's so beautiful. And her variegation, oop, just bonked the mic again. Her variegation is so beautiful. On some leaves, it's a little bit more subtle, like on this one. You can still see it, but it's not as flashy. Some of her other leaves, it's like a lot more noticeable on. And again, I really love that kind of like dark variegation. So beautiful. And she is like a little beat up. Like, this happened during shipping, which, I mean, when you get a plant this big, like, you're going to have some damage when you get it, because it's very difficult to safely package a plant that is this large without a lot of damage to the stems and stuff. So she came in like reasonably good condition considering how large she was. And she was like, the price was incredible. I think that I said, if I remember correctly, she was like $80 for this like enormous variegated Anthurium. Like, that's ridiculous. That is such a good price. So considering the price point and how beautiful the plant is and how large, like, I still think that that outweighs the bad experience that I had with like the root rot and stuff, because she is bouncing back, and like these bird's nest type Anthuriums are typically pretty resilient. But yeah, so I think this is one of my all-time favorite plants. I would say this one and the Scindapsus J. Aurea, probably my two top favorite plants right now. So yeah, totally beautiful. Really beautiful leaf shape. I love these like funny little elbows that she has. Like, if you can see that, like her little joints that kind of like help her move her leaves around. That is so cute. So I'm very excited to update y'all in the future when we get a new leaf out of her. Like, I cannot wait to see what that first leaf is going to look like. And she has like a little caterpillar sticking up that's been like growing a little bit, but it's like such such a minute difference. Like, I still feel like there's probably gonna be a little while before she actually is like comfortable enough to put out a new leaf once she kind of gets her roots situated, you know. Beautiful. This next guy, this is my Philodendron Dark Lord. And look, I know this is not the most amazing looking plant right now, and that it's a little bit crusty and dusty. Like, literally it's pretty dusty. But the thing is, I've had to restart this plant like literally probably like 6 times from these 2 cuttings that I have in here. And it just kept having like root rot, and then it was growing all weird and doing the philodendron thing where the leaves would get stuck and then they tear off and the leaves would yellow. Like, you can still kind of see some of the discoloration in some of these older leaves where it's been struggling. And it was very sad because I will put on the screen a photo of what this plant looks like when it's mature, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's very gothic looking, very dark. It has these kind of like angular, regal shaped leaves that I really, really love. And I would love to one day have the opportunity to have that really like beautiful mature plant. And this is the best that it has ever done for me. So I kind of like just decided on a whim when I'm like doing this whole like plant restructuring thing going on, that I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pot this plant up, and if it lives, it lives. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And shockingly, it's been doing okay. Like, you can see it has, well, maybe you can see. I always say you can see, but I feel like that is not always the case. But it does have a little root here in the back that you may or may not be able to see, like right here. And it's been putting out a couple of new leaves. Like, this is its most recent leaf, and this is the best looking leaf that it has given me since I've had this plant. So that is such a good positive sign for me, that maybe, you know, like the 7th time is the charm, and it is actually going to grow a little bit better now. And even that leaf, like that one's not too bad either. That one's a little bit longer, but you can see how like beautiful and like slick and shiny these leaves are. And it's just so pretty. Like, I just love, I mean, you know, many of us love the really, really dark foliage on some of these plants. And I just think those glossy dark leaves are so incredibly beautiful. And it kind of has that like maroony, blood red petiole and stem. Such a beautiful plant. So I'm very hopeful that this will be the time that it finally starts doing a little better. And I cannot tell you how happy I am for this to have a positive outcome, because always I just like expect the worst when I pot up a plant that has been struggling, and I'm kind of like, okay, this is the last time that I'm dealing with this. And then when they succeed and they start growing a little bit better, like, that is just so wonderful. So yeah, hopefully this will have some positive updates in the future. All right, I've got kind of like a weird one for you next. This is one that you would have seen if you saw my like kind of like walkthrough updates video that I did, again, not too long ago. My concept of time is not the best, but it was not very long ago. And I had said that this was like a newer-ish plant, and I was letting it get settled in for quite some time because it gives me very much calathea vibes. Like, the texture of the leaves and just like the growth pattern and stuff very much reminded me of calathea. And I do not have any calathea in my collection. I have some Maranta that are actually doing really well, but no calathea. Like, I'm still just not confident in having any of those in my collection. So I've seen, you've probably seen too, this like, I don't know how to say it, Campferia, kind of like not craze, but they've just been kind of like popularized recently, like the ornamental ginger plants. And the one initially that really caught my eye that is still like quite expensive, and this is, I feel like this is the more popular one that you've probably seen, and it's the one with like the pink variegation, and it is so incredibly beautiful. Like, the leaves are really beautiful. But I had seen this other plant. So this is a let me look at the tag just to be sure I'm saying this right. It's a Cornukaempferia Aurantiflora jungle silver. I'm sure that I'm butchering that pronunciation, so just refer to the name on the screen for what that name is. But this plant, wow, When I saw this, I thought it was beautiful, but in person, like, okay, look, you looking at this plant right now and thinking, wow, that plant is beautiful. It is nothing compared to what it looks like in person. These leaves are so velvety. They're like Anthurium leaves. They're such a velvet, dark, beautiful texture and color. So they're kind of like, they're very, very, very dark green. It's very reminiscent of an Anthurium to me. So very, very dark green velvety foliage with this silver variegation speckled on the outer edges. And I'm trying not to like lose all the dirt in here, but you can see the growth pattern. It just really, really reminds me of a Calathea. Like the kind of like ruffle in the leaves and the way they grow from this base. And also like the way the leaves come out here. Like you can see they come out kind of like rolled up like Calathea leaves do. So I was like very leery about how this plant was going to grow, but she's actually doing pretty well. Like you can see, maybe here I go again with the, you can see. I really do think you can see the roots in here though. The roots here in the front. So she's been growing surprisingly well, like significantly better than I thought that she was going to. And she recently put out this leaf. So you can see the previous leaves. They do have the silver variegation, but it's not like quite as prominent. Still beautiful. But this newest leaf, look at how much silver. It's kind of difficult to show y'all this. Just bear with me here. But look at how much silver is on that newest leaf. Wow, that is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm sure this has to do with me giving it more light than it was receiving wherever it came from. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous. And it's got another leaf that's coming out there. It has this leaf that is about to unfurl on this side. And it is just so pretty. It's another one of those that has almost like the water dragon, this very like regal, beautiful, kind of like graceful type of growth pattern in the way the leaves kind of curl outwards off of their petiole. And just the way the light catches the leaves, like with that really dark velvety foliage. And the silver is quite sparkly and shiny. It's a little bit like a Scindapsus silver where it's like almost like, you know what it looks like is like when you have clothing that has the reflective stripes on it, like athletic clothing, that's what the silver looks like on these leaves. So it's got like dark velvety Anthurium leaves with that kind of like reflective silver variegation. Absolutely gorgeous. And it traveled pretty well. It did lose several leaves, but you can see like it's putting out so many leaves, and it's got like 2 or 3 more spikes in here where it's like putting out new leaves as well. So I'm so excited to see like in the next few months when all these leaves start coming out and it kind of like fills out a little bit more, what it's going to look like, because I think this plant is just so incredibly beautiful. And also I haven't mentioned, but the backs of the leaves are kind of like that reddish maroon purpley color, which again is very reminiscent of Calathea. I really love that very like maroony coloration. So beautiful. A lot of different textures and contrasts and different points of interest with this one. I've got one more Anthurium to talk about, and this one has kind of been standing out to me just because it's so different than my like typical Anthuriums that I go after. I feel like what's appreciated in Anthurium is like the dark velvety leaves, especially like ones with variegation nowadays and stuff. But this one has just really been standing out to me, and this is my Anthurium. Whoa, calm down, buddy. This is my Anthurium rabbit ears, and you can see why it's called Anthurium rabbit ears. It has these crazy lobes at the top that look like rabbit ears, and I love the texture on this one. This is like more of a leathery texture. It does not have that velvety finish, but you can see it has this kind of like blue reflective tone in the leaves, as well as dark green, and it's got these kind of like lime green veins. So the coloration is just so beautiful, and I love kind of like the wideness of the sinus before it goes into the lobes. I think it's just so beautiful and so different from any other Anthurium that I have in my collection. This is one that arrived on death's doorstep. Like, I was 95% sure that I was going to lose this plant when I got it. And then it decided to put this leaf out. Like, this was the first leaf that it gave me, surprisingly. And it is almost perfect, which is something else for me because I grow my Anthuriums in ambient just with like a couple of humidifiers. So I do typically get like some kind of leaf damage just because the humidity is not like 80 or 90%. But this one came out absolutely perfect, and it's so beautiful and so cool looking. It's got like all this texture from the veination. It's kind of like almost like a luxuriance a little bit, like in this area between the veins. I don't know if you can see how much texture it has, but it has a lot of texture and a really interesting shift, and then just like some really cool lobes. Like, there's a lot to love about this one. And it does have a little caterpillar down here, but it is like, it hasn't done anything for a little while. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer before it decides to give me another leaf, especially since this one was fairly large for it being its first leaf. It does have another leaf back here of its old leaves, but that one's kind of crusting up. So I feel like that one's probably going to die off before too long, but I am more than happy with this one. All right, guys, I've got 2 left. I'm going to leave my favoriteest one for the last one, but this is going to be the Amydrium Medium, and this is the variegated version. And this is one of those plants that is very much like you hate it or love it because it's crusty looking. Like, it's got that like really weird variegation, and the leaves separate in this just like nonsensical way. Like how they just kind of like stand out like that. It is so bizarre. And especially like this lower leaf. Like, what the heck is this? What is going on in this plant's genetics that made it do this? It is so bizarre, but I just like it so much because it is so bizarre and it's so different. And the variegation and texture and just like the sprawl of the fenestrations in the leaves is so, like, everything about the plant is bizarre. And then also like it's a climber, so it like climbs and has all these like crazy looking leaves that are sticking out everywhere. But it's been growing so well, and like the leaves are so perky and cute. Like, even though it's weird and a little bit deformed looking, it just has a lot of a positive personality despite its very strange appearance. And the variegation is just so cool. It has this kind of like minty, it's like sectoral and mint. And the texture makes it that much more interesting. Like, this just, it doesn't look like any other plant. I really appreciate that nowadays when there's a plant that doesn't look like the variegation and growth and everything is so different from anything else that I have. Because when you have so many plants, a lot of them can really start looking the same. But like, this one does not look like anything else. It is totally unique. The last one, and my grand finale, is the Rhaphidophora Foraminifera, I believe is the way that's pronounced. And it is a variegated version, and I just do not have enough good things to say about this plant. It is so easygoing, so like no complaints, no issues with anything. It is just happy to be alive and be growing. Look at these crazy roots that are growing in the back of the moss pole. Like, it has not been very long since I have put it on a pole, and the roots are just going absolutely insane in here. Like, it is so eager to climb. It wants to climb so bad. And the variegation on the leaves is so incredibly gorgeous. Like, it's like a very aurea. It's funny. It's like a stripy sectoral. It almost reminds me kind of like a tiger stripy type pattern. The variegation kind of like follows the veination and the texture of the leaves, which is just very, I feel like, very visually appealing when everything kind of like works together in one direction. Really beautiful. And that's its most recent leaf. I have been giving it some more light, so I've gotten a little bit more variegation than the lower leaves. This is the one before that. And then the lower leaves, excuse the residue on there, that is just from pest treatments. But the lower leaves still carry that really beautiful, kind of like a darker aurea type variegation. And it is just, I just love it. I love everything about it. I love the growth pattern. I love the shapes of the leaves and the veination and the way the leaves kind of like go out like this way, kind of like back and forth up the pole. It is so beautiful, easygoing. When I underwater it, it doesn't really have any complaints. I think the leaves that has given me are like these top 3. So since I've been taking care of it, the leaves look so much better. The ones down here, probably just from like the combination of like a changed environment and travel and stuff, they are a little bit crusty. But yeah, such an easygoing, gorgeous plant. When these get really mature and fenestrated, they kind of have, or whatever it's called, like the inner fenestrations. So beautiful. And again, just that variegation, phenomenal. Absolutely gorgeous. So striking. All right, guys, that is everyone that has made it into the favorites for this past month. I appreciate y'all so much for taking time out of your day to stop and watch this video. If you like this video and you want to see more content like this from me, please like, please subscribe. It means so much to me and it helps my channel so much. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.